L11 gas turbine engine weighs only 500 pounds, yet develops 1,100 horsepower. The turbine is basically a jet engine with a fan placed on the exhaust. The fan is connected by a shaft that runs through the engine to the transmission. The pressure of gases pushing through the fan generates enough force to turn the 48-foot rotor system and the 8-foot tail rotor assembly and lift the 5,000-pound machine and a maximum load of 4,500 pounds into the air. The Huey's streamlined design allows for a maximum cruise speed of 120 knots with a V&E, velocity never exceed, of 140 knots. Huey's trainers at Fort Walters flew at about 80 knots. Though not recommended, the Huey is capable of hovering vertically up to an altitude of 10,000 feet on a standard day. It is fast, it is efficient, it is dependable. It also comes in several configurations. The film showed each of these configurations. A gunship, or hog as it was called, bristling with pilot-directed machine guns, rockets, and grenade launchers. A troop carrier, or slick, with room for 8 combat-equipped soldiers plus 2 pilots, a crew chief and a door gunner, and an air ambulance, or medevac, carrying 6 litters. It had also been adapted as a flying command center and as a light cargo ship. I could hardly wait to get a shot at flying it. My first impression was that this must be the Cadillac of helicopters. When on my orientation flight, the IP squeezed the starter trigger, he received a shrill responding whine as the high-speed starter motor began to move the blades. That was a startling contrast to the hacking cough of the Hughes 300. The IP indicated that I was to do the takeoff. "You got it," he said. "I got it." I pulled collective. The big rotor thudded a little with increased pitch. Then the bird leapt into the air like it had been goosed. This machine had power. I did the Huey shuffle, the characteristic wagging of the tail back and forth by neophytes over-controlling the sensitive pedals. I grinned at the IP as I flew the bird above Georgia. The heavy, thudding sound of the main rotor, that distinctive whop, 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 whop that was becoming so familiar over Vietnam, was more than compensated for by the smooth whine of the engine. All helicopters were noisy, but there was no excessive roaring, vibrating, or shaking with the Huey. The IP landed the bird on the helipad with the engine running at a normal 330 RPM. He looked at me, then cut power completely. He immediately pulled collective, and to my astonishment, the machine lifted itself off the pad and did a 360-degree turn before the blade lost its inertia and lift, and the helicopter sank back to the ground. Only a Huey had that kind of power. Ballast weights on each of the 2 main rotor blade tips gave the system tremendous inertia. I was much impressed. Training at Savannah was what we had received at Walters, except more of it, more advanced, and all of it in the UH-1. We did a lot of instrument training under the hood when all you saw were needles and bubbles on the instrument panel, while your body told you you were flying on your side or upside down. Traditionally, helicopter pilots maintained visual contact with the ground. VFR and IFR were the same thing. Visual Flight Rule, VFR, stood for Visually Follow Roads. Instrument Flight Rule, IFR, meant I follow roads. If weather came in and you couldn't fly lower and slower, you sat down in a field and waited. That wouldn't work in Vietnam, we were told. Monsoon season produced a lot of rain and fog. You had to really fly IFR in it, because if you set your ship down, you might be nesting in the middle of a bunch of pissed-off commies. All training was geared toward a single goal: Vietnam. Combat flying techniques generally meant contour flying, low to the earth, to keep down exposure to enemy ground fire. Skimming along only feet above the treetops at 100 knots with the world passing by underneath in a green blur. As part of the confidence course, we sailed choppers under power lines and made low turns so steep the blade tips almost chopped into the ground. It was thrilling, it was exciting, and, we were told, we would find it practical and useful when we got to Vietnam. Every lesson started with the preface, In Vietnam, because of terrain and enemy presence, flights of helicopters had to land in small LZs in the forest. They had to get in quickly, do their